Hello students. So today we're going to continue our journey into the macromolecules, and we're going to see our second group of macromolecules, which is lipids, also known as fats. So for today, we're going to describe public concerns of fats, compare fat versus a fatty acid, classify the types of triglycerides, discuss the trends of medium chain triglycerides, discuss butter regulations, explain the issues with triglyceride storage and shelf life, and identify the labeling of fats. So sometimes we hear that there is a concern with fat and fat consumption. So an important thing is that normally we, as in the label, we recognize fat. And the important thing is that fat contains 9 calories per gram. So if we remember, carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram and proteins contain the same amount, 4 calories per gram. So if we think about fat containing 9 calories per gram, this means that it's more than double. So fats have a higher calorie intake. And certain fats can lead to health concerns. And most of the time we think about trans fats or saturated fat or as we call it, bad cholesterol. And most of these health issues are commonly combined with consumption of high amounts of sodium and sugar. And these can lead to some health problems related with heart, obesity, and diabetes. So is a fat and a fatty acid the same? Well, fats are a fat is a molecule that is formed by the combination of 3 chains of fatty acids plus a molecule of glycerol. So we have a backbone glycerol molecule, and then we have 3 fatty acids that are attached to this glycerol molecule. So if we think about fatty acids, they are our building blocks of fat. They are considered weak acids, and they contain between 8 and 20 carbon atoms in length, and they carry a pair of hydrogen atoms, and this is the CH2 group. So if we take a closer look at the pictures in the right, we have the 3 main types of fatty acids. So we have our saturated fatty acid, and we can see that in this case we have a linear structure, as we can see here in this picture. Then we move to the monounsaturated fatty acid, and we're going to look a little bit closer in the next slides about what this means. But if we see the word mono, this means, as we have been seeing before, it's 1. So it has 1 here in saturation, or 1 double bond, and we can see that the shape is different, so there's a bend. And one of the most common monounsaturated fatty acids is oleic acid, and we have it here. Then we have the polyunsaturated fatty acids, and as the word suggests, we have poly, so this means many, so more than 1 in saturation. And we have a different structure, as we can see here, and linoleic fatty acid is one of the most common polyunsaturated fatty acids. So what is a triglyceride? So triglycerides are the most abundant fat. We have 2 types. We can classify them as so, and we have the saturated fats, which are full of hydrogen atoms, so only single bonds. And we have the unsaturated fats, and in this category we can have mono or polyunsaturated fats, and in this case there's hydrogen that is missing, and this hydrogen is replaced by a double bond. So when we see a double bond in the structure, we can say that this fatty acid is unsaturated. So I would recommend that you guys take a look at this video, where there's an in-depth explanation of saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats in terms of their structure and configuration. So saturated fats are longer chain. They are highly saturated, and normally they are solid at room temperature. And we have some examples here, like we can see butter, we can see cheese, and some meat products. And so many saturated fats are specific of the animal fats, but not exclusive. But if we see something that is solid at room temperature, it certainly contains saturated fat. Then we have the monounsaturated fats, which are, as we mentioned before, there's one double bond. And then we have these acids that are shorter chain. They have high concentration of unsaturation, and they are liquid at room temperature. So in this case, because we have monounsaturated, we have one double bond. So here we can also, I suggest that you take a look at this video, and it talks about canola oil and its manufacturing process. So as we can see from the pictures, one of the most common monounsaturated fatty acids is oleic acid. And oleic acid is abundant in olive oil, for example, but there's also other monounsaturated fatty acids in fats that are liquid at room temperature. And there's many sources, not only oils, but let's say avocados and nuts, in this case, for example, almonds, and so. So if we go to the polyunsaturated fatty acids, as we talked before, we have the poly word, so this means more than one double bond. And the most common ones and very popular ones are omega-3 and omega-6. So these are considered healthy fats, and they are required by the diet. So they are essential. This means that our body cannot produce them, and we have to get them from diet or supplements. So foods high in omega-3 are, for example, salmon, cod liver oil, sardines, and flaxseed. And foods high in omega-6 fatty acids are safflower oil, walnuts, peanut butter, and avocado oil. So, so in general, if we have combination of variety in our diet that combines all the types of fats, we keep a balance, and that's very important. So there is a trend to use these medium chain triglycerides, and these are saturated fat, and they are in the medium chain size between carbons, between 6 and 12 carbons, and they are easy for the body to process as energy source because of their short, medium chain size. And one of the best examples is coconut oil, and this is a common source of lauric acid, and this is a 12 carbon fatty acid. And we can see here in our ingredients, we have here our medium chain fatty acids. And just as an introduction, we can take a look here, and here is where we can find the total fat. And we're going to talk about that later. And here we have cholesterol, which is also a type of a lipid, a different structure than our triglycerides, but it's also part of this macromolecule group. So regardless of, sometimes we see that, well, lipids have negative publicity or health issues, but lipids are so important for our body. Among the main issues, there's energy storage. So as we saw before, carbohydrates are like the initial or the fast energy source for our bodies. But in the case in which we have excess energy, so we are going to store this energy in the form of fat in our body. And it's very important because in cases in which we have some sort of need for energy, we can use our storage, and that's why we have fat in our body. But that's not only the only function of lipids. We have also the function for regulating and signaling. So lipids are very important in the cell membrane. And as you may recall from like biology classes, they are the phospholipids are an essential part of the cell membrane, and those are also lipids, and they help in regulating passes of different types of molecules, and also signaling in the case, for example, of like hormones. So they are precursors of hormones, and hormones are very important in our body in like many functions that we develop. So that's a very important function. Also, we have insulating and protecting. So as we, this is very straightforward, but fats in our body, it protects from, so insulating from like different changes in temperature, for example, or just physically, it helps insulate the body and the different organs and bones, muscles, and it protects us. And then it is very important in transportation, and mainly for liposoluble vitamins. So this means vitamins that are soluble in fat or in lipids, and these vitamins are mainly vitamin A, E, D, and K. So because of their similarity in terms of polarity, they are very important in transporting these types of vitamins. So this is a message from the American Heart Association. So does my body need fats? So regardless of what it said about health and fat, so the important thing is to have an equilibrium, right? So it's important not to avoid fat intake, but to have a balance between the types of fat that we eat and the choices, the food choices that we make. Because as I mentioned before, fats are so important to many of the functions that our body performs, and it's very important to have a well-balanced combination. And I also encourage you to watch these videos of why saturated fats are healthy. So the importance of having a balanced diet is essential, and combining different types of fats for our body is very important for all the important functions that they develop. So this is just a small break, and as an example about, for example, butter, and how differences in the type of fat or the amount of fat can have in the perception of quality by the consumer. So as I mentioned before, food has a specific standards of identity, so things that they have to comply with. So according to USDA, salted butter should have 45.6 grams of saturated fat and 16.9 grams of monounsaturated fat. And this is and also the US standards for butter requires a minimum of 80% milk fat. So in order for a product to be called butter, it has to have these requirements. And if we compare them with the European regulations, we have that they require a minimum of 82% fat. So sometimes consumers think about like, European butter, it's richer and it tastes better. And that's only because this content or concentration difference. So it has a higher milk fat content. As we know, butter is made from milk fat, and that's from animal origin, and that's those are the standards of identity. So how can fatty acids break free? So lipids are very susceptible to chemical reactions, and here we have two types of the most important reactions in lipids. So one of them is hydrolysis, and this is when we combine a triglyceride plus water, and then we have a separation of the molecules, so it's separated into glycerol and fat and 3 fatty acids. And the other one is oxidation, and this is in the presence of oxygen. So these both chemical reactions are not like a single step, but they have different steps and different chains of reactions. And these are the reactions that should be considered when like manufacturing or deciding what type of, for example, package to use, or what type of like antioxidants to use in products that are high in fat. So everything is done to try to avoid this type of chemical reactions. So if we look a little bit about oxidation, so oxidation is triggered, of course, because of the presence of oxygen, also high temperature and light. So sometimes we have, and to protect our fats from these type of reactions, and as we may know, and I'm sure you guys have experienced like the taste of like rancidity or oxidized fats, and we can see that, for example, in like almonds or cashews or pecans, and also the products that are fried like snacks, and we want to avoid this type of reactions or of reagents, and we want our products to be stored under like low oxygen conditions, like on low temperature, and without the presence of light. So that's why we think about, for example, potato chips or say Doritos or other snacks, and they are packaged in a bag that is covered in the inside with a metallic aluminum foil barrier, and this is to avoid the presence of light. And also we use several antioxidants, like for example vitamin E or tocopherols, and other types of like BHQ, TBHQ, which are, if you see the ingredients, these are antioxidants to help prevent oxidation in this type of like high fat or high lipid snacks. So I'm sure you have heard about trans fats, and trans fats is has had a lot of like controversy, and they have been banned. And remember to check out the link of the different types of fats, and here we have a link to trans fats and what are the FDA's regulations related with trans fats. But just a little bit of history, if we think about margarine. So as we recall, oils are liquid at room temperature, and vegetable oils like corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, etc. So if we want to, and as we may recall also, vegetable oils having saturation. So if we want to convert them into a solid, like for example margarine, and so that there was a process, there's a process that is called hydrogenation, so adding hydrogen atoms, and thus making these insaturated or unsaturated fats convert to saturated fats, and thus change their state from liquid to solid. And this is a process that at the beginning was kind of not well maybe controlled, and it could lead to the formation of trans fats. So trans fats is just only the configuration of how hydrogens are aligned with their carbon. So if we think about, let's say, a carbon, and then we have a double bond here, and we have another carbon here. So if we have the cis configuration, we have the hydrogen atoms in the same side. Okay, so we have a hydrogen atom here, and then we have a hydrogen atom here. So this is a cis configuration, they're in the same side. And we think about the trans configuration. So trans configuration will be something like carbon atom, and then we have our hydrogen atom here, and then we have here the hydrogen atom. So this is a trans configuration. So this is, during the hydrogenation process, there was this formation of trans fatty acids. So now these issues have been resolved, and there's more technology, and we can avoid the formation of trans fatty acids. But before these trans fatty acids, so fatty acids that were in this configuration, were the cause or have been associated also with some health issues. And that's why regulations are very strict about trans fats and their presence in food. They can still be present, but there's the intent to have them in the lowest concentration possible. But this is all it means. Trans is just the configuration of fatty acids, and this happens during the hydrogenation process, which is a conversion of like vegetable oils into solids to make margarine. So how are fats labeled? So what's the interface, or what's what we are familiarized with? So let's take a look at, this is a California olive ranch extra virgin olive oil. So this is an olive oil, that's the important thing to know. And if we take a look at the nutritional label, so let's take a look at this part, okay? And we have here the total fats, okay? So we have total fats and we have 14 grams, and that's 18% of the daily value. So the total fat daily value is currently 78 grams, and the saturated fat daily value is 20 grams. So inside total fat, we have this classification. So we have saturated fat, and that's 2 grams. Here we have saturated fat. Then we go to trans fats, and that's 0 grams. And we go to polyunsaturated fat, and it says 1.5 grams. And then monounsaturated fat, and that's 11 grams. So this breakdown is done mainly for products that are high in fat, okay? And if we think about the information that the label will give us, we can, if we add these results, and we have 2.2 grams of saturated fat plus 1.5 of polyunsaturated plus 11 of monounsaturated, we have 14.5. And that is the same that we have here. It has been rounded, and that's the 14 grams of total fat. So from this information, we can also get, if we want, the percentage of monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, and saturated fat from this olive oil. So if we just think about it, we have, let's say, around 80% of the total fat is monounsaturated if we calculate the percentage. And remember, this has been rounded, of course. And if we think about the percentage of polyunsaturated fat, that will be around 10%. So 80%, 10%, and also a similar amount of saturated fat. And sometimes some people may ask, well, these here, in this case, it adds to the total fat, but in some cases it will not add, because triglycerides are not the only type of fat that we measure when we analyze total fat. So there may be other types of fat that are also contributing. So these may or may not add to the total, but that depends on the food that we are using. In the case of vegetable oils like olive oil, it's going to add up. So cholesterol, labeling for cholesterol. So cholesterol is a different type of lipid. It has a different structure. If you want, you may Google it. It's more like a ring structure, and it's a waxy fat-like substance. It's produced by the liver in our bodies, and it may also be consumed from food. Some important thing to notice is that our body is capable of producing all the cholesterol that we need in the liver, as I mentioned. So we don't really need an intake of cholesterol. But it's important to notice that cholesterol is present in only foods from animal origin. So there's no cholesterol in foods from vegetable origin. So sometimes if you see a claim that says naturally free from cholesterol, so anything that is vegetable will not have cholesterol. So cholesterol is just specific for animal products. So some examples of cholesterol, where cholesterol is found in meats and poultry, dairy products, egg yolks, shellfish, and spreads. And here we have the label, and the daily value for cholesterol currently is 300 milligrams, and it's important to notice that it's milligrams. So we have been talking about grams, and here we have milligrams, and it has its own place here in the nutritional label. So now we're talking about milligrams. If we recall, in 1 gram we have 1,000 milligrams, and that's important to notice. So cholesterol is very important for our body functions. So it it's a component of cell membranes. Also helps in the production of bile, which helps with fat digestion, and that's very, very important. And it's also used to make vitamin D and certain hormones, so it's very important. So as I mentioned before, we produce it in our body, but it's also present in many foods from animal origin. So this is a brief like nutshell of something which is milk pasteurization. So if we think about cow milk, right? I'm going to just talk about this type of milk, and then we have the different grams and composition. So we have different types of milk. We have skim milk, and then we see that it's 0 grams of fat, 8 grams of protein. Then we have 1% milk, and it has 2.5 grams and 8 grams of protein. And 2% milk, 5 grams of fat, 8 grams of protein. And whole milk, 8 grams of fat and 8 grams of protein. So if we can see that there's a constant concentration of protein at 8 grams, and then there's varying concentration of fat. So that's what makes the difference in the different types of milk. It's the fat content. Depending on the type of milk. So what they do normally in milk processing is that they separate through a centrifugation process the milk, the water's parts or water soluble part of milk from the fat, and then they add the fat according to that type of milk that we want to do. So between like 0 grams or 8 grams, depending on the type of milk. And so milk is a very good example also to start talking about processing. So if we think about, I'm sure you guys are familiarized with this type of milk. So normally it comes in a gallon or half a gallon. It's a plastic bottle and it's in the fridge. So this is called traditional pasteurization, and it has a process called high pasteurization, high temperature short time, and this is HTST, and it's heated at 165 Fahrenheit for 15 seconds. And then it is cooled down and it's packaged in this type of jugs, and its shelf life is between 2 to 3 weeks in the fridge. Then we go to the next level and we have this UHT pasteurization, and you can see that the package is different. So it's like a carton or a paperboard, and this has been processed with ultra high temperature pasteurization, and it's called UHT. And this is pasteurization, so milk is heated at higher temperatures, so 280, for a shorter amount of time, 2 seconds. And then it's packaged, so it's cooled down and packaged in this type of container. And the shelf life is between 1 and 2 months, so it has a longer shelf life until opened, of course. And then we have a combination of processing and packaging, and this is the third one, right? And we have UHT pasteurization, so the same process but plus an aseptic packaging. So the same process as described before, but now it is packaged in a sterile box. And this is called aseptic processing. So this, we have the milk that has been pasteurized, and we have a package that is sterile, and it is in an aseptic environment, so very sterile conditions, and this will help us have a shelf life of 6 months at room temperature. So there's no need for refrigeration here in this package. And this is very widely consumed in Europe and Latin America and Asia. So in the US, we normally consume this type of milk. And this is new in the market. So new trends, for example, for organic, also as a way to differentiate. But how it's important to notice how different processes in combination with packaging will affect, of course, the quality or quality characteristics of the product, but also the shelf life and the temperature at which we can store this type of products. So today we learned, so you should be able to describe why there's a public concern of fats, explain the types of fat and provide food examples of each, compare standards for butter in the US and Europe, explain how fatty acids can break free, explain the labeling of fat and cholesterol, and explain milk processing types. So thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next presentation.